It's Remembrance Sunday, and I don't remember one being warm like this, but part of it is growing up in the traditions that I had as a child. My brothers were very involved in Army cadets, and of course they both played trumpets, so that was part of my being raised in a family that this was an important part of our growing up time, a time to remember. I don't have any particular relatives that served that died. I have one uncle that came back, and of course he lived, but the only reason he did that is because he lied about his age to get in. But when we think about what happened in the time of war, we think about many things that take place that are never told. The stories are never shared. Many of you are aware I'm involved in the Royal Canadian Legion as a chaplain, and I finally got my badge. I'm really sort of proud of that, because I've only been doing this for 23 years. It's an interesting experience to go and share with men and women who have served. Not that I go hang out and drink beer, okay? I know that was the question on your mind. But I do go and share and listen to stories. Stories of people and their experiences of war. They can tell the stories. They're back home. They shared in time, and they remember. They remember like it was yesterday. And so this is an important time because we need to take the time to remember, to honor those men and women who fought in wars and battles in times past, in order that we might live in peace today. It's a day to realize once again that they will not be forgotten because we remember their ultimate sacrifice. Different times in our history, people went to a foreign land and died for the sake of others. Were buried often in unmarked grave sites, and yet we recognize them as people whose legacies should be told again and again. They gave of themselves so that they would be able to live in peace, because it is the veteran who has enabled each generation since to have freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to speak, freedom to assemble, freedom to be fairly heard, the opportunity to vote, and the ability to serve. They paid the ultimate sacrifice for friends they did not know, for a future they would not experience on earth. And for what? For the price of freedom for those who would follow us. They gave of themselves, and it cost their lives. They sacrificed, a self-sacrifice. Well, when we think about ourselves, we too make sacrifices. Probably not to the extent of those soldiers, but we do, or we did. As children, we often realize what our parents did to raise us. Yet as parents now, we might understand what they gave up in order to provide not only the basic necessities of life, but the extras. There are families today where parents are working 2 or 3 jobs in order to afford post-secondary education or even the basics of food and shelter. Or maybe they're spending so much time, they're sharing time in homework and tutoring and trying to teach their children what it means to live a good life, giving of themselves. It's a form of giving to another, sacrificing time for oneself to become time for another in order to meet needs. But sometimes we too need to watch what it is we're called to do and how we do it. We're called not to give till it hurts, but to give until it helps. There's a story about a wealthy man who had been never known to be very generous with his church. The church was involved in a big financial problem, and they resolved it was time to pay him a visit. After all, he was wealthy. When the committee met with the man one afternoon, they said that in view of his considerable resources, they were sure that he would like to make a substantial contribution to a program. I see. So you figured it all out. In the course of your investigation, did you discover that I have a widowed mother who has no other means of support but me? No. Did you know that I have a sister who is left by a drunken husband with 5 children and no means to provide for them? No, they said. Well, sir, did you know also that I have a brother who is crippled due to an automobile accident and can never work another day to support his wife and family? No, they did not know this either. Well, man who is being asked to share says, I've never given anything of any of them a cent, so why would I give anything to you? You didn't expect that answer, did you? Most of us never give till it hurts or helps. In our Bible stories today, we read two stories about two different women living at different times. Both were widows. Both were poor. And both needed to do something in order to survive. Ruth's story of gleaning in the fields of Boaz is a story of sacrifice. It's a story of love. I know it seemed funny when Shelley read it that they meet in a threshold floor and then they're married and they have a child. You have to fill in the gaps on your own, okay? There's a love story and how Naomi teaches Ruth to land her man, okay? To get to Boaz. It's a wonderful love story. And it's based on love, friendship, fellowship, and family. But it's a story of sacrifice. Ruth had been living and knowing love. She was in a wonderful family situation with Naomi and her husband, and then the two sons and Ruth was married to one of the sons, and all those men died, leaving them without anything. She had never gone without before. And now here she was, toiling with the servants of a landowner in order to get grain, to make a little bit of bread. Ruth was seen by that landowner as a woman in need, but she saw him as something different. She worked hard to get the grain she needed to make food, but eventually she did catch Boaz's attention, and they did marry, bringing her sacrifice of working the fields to an end. And it is through Ruth and Boaz that the next generations follow, the generations that lead to the birth of Christ. The other widow that we talked about and heard the story about is the one whom Jesus watches. She's not named as she is coming into the synagogue. Jesus is watching and people coming in and putting their money into the treasury. They didn't have the formal time like we share here where we pass the offering place. They had it where you came in and there was just a box and the money would go into a box inside the wall, kind of. And Jesus noticed many rich people throwing in large amounts in the offering. And he never thought twice of that. But when he saw this poor widow coming in and putting in two very small copper coins, worth hardly anything, into that treasury, he noticed. A poor widow at that time meant she had little. She might have a place to live with family. She would have no means of earning money. And so when she found something, she would give it, if she could. And what did she give? Everything she had. Out of her poverty, she gave more. She sacrificed all for the sake of God's work and to God's glory. So the question is today, as we remember those who sacrificed themselves in many different ways, how do you give of yourself? And do you give till it hurts? Or do you give till it helps? A priest once asked a parishioner of his to serve as financial chair. The man was also a manager of a grain elevator. And the man agreed to do this particular job on two conditions. No report would be given throughout a whole year, and no one would ask any questions during the year. At the end of the year, this man who had taken charge of the financial responsibilities of that church made a report. He had paid off the church debt of $200,000. He'd redecorated the church. He'd sent money to missions. There was $5,000 in the bank. Needless to say, everyone wanted to know how. The man quietly explained, "You people bring your grain to my elevator for sale. As you did business with me, I simply withheld 10% and gave it to the church. You never missed it. It is that 10% which you sacrificed and did not notice, which made a difference. A sacrifice which was not noticed made a difference. But God knows our sacrifices. God knows what we do and what we do not do on a regular basis. God knows how we give of ourselves through our actions, our service, and even our lives. Just as God knew each person we remember and honor today. Those who served and died during the world wars, other conflicts, peacekeeping tasks, and even as we remember the young man who was guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier just a year ago. God knows how each one of us is a part of this creation he has made, and how we are each living out their faith and our hope in him. We may not know or see how, but the result is all around us and is relevant. People's lives are being changed and challenged as we love others. We just need to realize that this love is what is calling us together. John 15 says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends." And we know the story of what happens with Jesus. He died. But he rose to new life for our sake. We're also to give of ourselves through Jesus by offering to God a sacrifice of praise. That is the fruit of lips that confess his name. That is to tell God who we are in relationship to him. We believe. We have faith. We confess. We receive forgiveness. We are to do good and to share with others, for it is with these sacrifices that God is pleased. Offering a sacrifice of praise. How often do we give thanks to God? How often do we sing God's praises? How often do we give of ourselves? As we remember those who laid down their lives for those who would come after them, let us remember them with thanks and praise. And may we make our sacrifices unto God, without counting the cost, but by giving our all for the sake of love. Let us offer a sacrifice of praise unto God for the many blessings we receive. And let's give of ourselves in love, so that others will continue and prayerfully be able to live in